The orbital academy of xenochemical arts hung in the celestial darkness, like a gleaming silver spider. Its 8 crystalline domes, connected by slender bridges that pulsed with light. Each dome rotated at a precise velocity to maintain optimal gravity for its inhabitants, a diverse collection of beings from across 17 star systems. From this vantage point, orbiting the swirling azure clouds of the gas giant Helion 5, the Academy commanded an unrivaled view of the cosmos. It was a place where the universe's brightest minds converged to push the boundaries of chemical science beyond what any single civilization could imagine. For Cadet Leo Hart, the only human among the 237 students, the Academy represented both the culmination of a lifelong dream and a daily exercise in humility. Standing 5'11" with dark hair that refused to behave in zero gravity, Leo had fought harder than anyone to earn his place here. Earth, after all, was considered a scientific backwater, its chemistry primitive compared to the elegant molecular manipulations practiced by older species. Final preparations. Cadets, announced the Academy's AI through the neural interface implanted behind Leo's ear. Professor Xylorn's amphitheater will achieve neutral buoyancy in 3 minutes. Leo swallowed hard as he drifted through the connector tube toward Dome 3. The third cycle of instruction had begun, and with it came the professor's notorious challenge, a trial that had ended many promising careers before they began. Last cycle, 3 cadets had withdrawn after failing. 1, a crystalline entity from the Rigel system, had actually shattered from stress. The amphitheater was a perfect sphere, its interior surface coated with a reactive polymer that changed color according to the chemical compounds detected in the air. Currently, it glowed a soft blue-green, reflecting the nervous pheromones of the assembled students. Leo pushed himself gently from the entrance, using the momentum to drift toward his assigned position. A small, transparent workstation floating among dozens of others, arranged in concentric rings. "Observe," came a voice like grinding stones. Professor Xylorn materialized in the center of the sphere, his gelatinous body pulsing with neural activity. 8 appendages, each tipped with specialized sensory organs, waved languidly in the zero gravity. Unlike most faculty who maintained a humanoid appearance out of courtesy, Xylorn proudly displayed his natural form, an unsettling reminder of his ancient lineage from the methane seas of Gliese 6 and 67. "The third cycle brings us to the resonance challenge," Xylorn announced, his words translated by the neural interface, while his actual vocalization sent ripples through the chamber's atmosphere. "As tradition dictates, you will demonstrate your understanding of chemical principles through a public exhibition." Leo glanced around at his classmates. To his left floated the Silk Scale twins from Deneb, their iridescent bodies quivering with anticipation. Beyond them, Rox, a plasma-winged entity whose species had evolved in the corona of a red dwarf, burned with such intensity that a special containment field surrounded her workstation. "The parameters," Xylorn continued, several of his eyes focusing directly on Leo, "are as follows. You will create a reaction sequence using only compounds indigenous to your species' homeworld. No synthetic catalysts, no quantum stabilizers, no exotic reagents imported from other systems." A wave of murmurs rippled through the students. This was unprecedented. Previous challenges had allowed access to the Academy's vast material libraries. "Furthermore," the professor added, "your reaction must demonstrate synchronicity with at least 3 distinct elemental phases. It must be aesthetically compelling, scientifically significant, and, above all, controlled." The Silk Scale twins chittered to each other in their native language, already plotting. Rox's flames burned brighter with confidence. "You have 5 rotations to prepare. On the 6th, you will present your work before the Assembly and a delegation from the Interstellar Science Council." Xylorn's body pulsed a deep purple. "Dismissed." As the students began to disperse, Leo remained floating in place, Mind racing. Indigenous Earth compounds? He had brought few materials with him, expecting to work with the Academy's resources. What could he possibly create that would compare to the bioluminescent wonders or quantum phase reactions his peers would undoubtedly produce? Heart! The professor's voice startled him. Somehow, Xylorn had moved to hover directly before Leo's station, without making a sound. I trust Earth's lone representative will not disappoint us. There was something in the gelatinous being's tone, not quite mockery, but a certain expectation of failure. No, Professor, Leo replied, straightening his posture. I won't disappoint. We shall see. 3 of Xylorn's eyes blinked in sequence. Earth chemistry is quaint, is it not? So focused on carbon and water. So limited. Leo felt heat rise to his face but maintained his composure. Sometimes limitations breed innovation. Professor. A charming sentiment. Xylorn drifted away. 5 rotations. Cadet Hart. As the professor glided toward the exit, Leo heard distinct laughter from several stations. Looking around, he caught Rox's fiery gaze. What will the human bring? She called loudly enough for all to hear. Perhaps he'll set fire to hydrogen and call it a star? More laughter followed. Leo pushed himself away from his station and headed for the exit, his mind already cataloging every Earth compound he might access. There had to be something that could stand against the chemical marvels his classmates would produce. Back in his personal quarters, designated Pod 42, Leo paced the small circular room. The curved walls were lined with holographic displays showing Earth, blue oceans, swirling clouds, the lights of cities twinkling on the night side, a reminder of home, and now, his challenge. Computer, display inventory of Earth origin compounds available in my personal storage, Leo commanded. A list materialized in the air before him. Sodium bicarbonate, 250 Gr. Acetic acid solution, 500 millimol. Sucrose, 100 Gr. Sodium chloride, 100 Gr. Citric acid, 50 Gr. Potassium nitrate, 50 Gr. Ethanol, 100 millimol. Various food extracts and colorings. Leo stared at the list. Recognition dawning. His mother had packed these emergency supplies as a reminder of home, baking ingredients and household staples. At the time, he'd been embarrassed, but had stored them away out of sentiment. Now they were all he had. Baking soda and vinegar. The most elementary chemical reaction taught to Earth children. A simple acid-base interaction producing carbon dioxide, water, and sodium acetate. He could already hear the mockery. Computer, access Academy database. Show me all research on carbon dioxide reactions in variable gravity environments. For hours, Leo pored over the data. What began as desperation slowly transformed into fascination. In zero gravity, carbon dioxide behaved differently, especially when introduced to various gas mixtures. There were properties here, subtle ones, that most Academy research overlooked precisely because they were so fundamental. By the time the ship's cycle shifted to rest period, Leo had filled 3 virtual notebooks with calculations. He'd need to construct a special pressure chamber, one that could control the release of the reaction products with absolute precision. And he'd need to understand exactly what other reactions would be present during the exhibition. Computer, set alarm for early phase of next cycle, Leo said, rubbing his eyes. And run simulation program Heart 1 while I sleep. As the lights dimmed in Pod 42, Leo allowed himself a small smile. Perhaps simple wasn't the same as primitive after all. The next 4 rotations passed in a blur of activity. Leo spent most of his time in the fabrication lab, using his allocated resources to construct a series of interconnected chambers. The design was elegant in its simplicity, transparent cylinders that would contain the initial reaction. Then, channel the resulting gas through a sequence of smaller chambers where it would interact with the residual atmosphere. Several times, He caught other cadets observing his work with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright derision. The silk-scale twins actually emitted their species' equivalent of laughter when they saw him measuring baking soda into a calibrated container. "The human plays with food ingredients," one chittered to the other. Leo ignored them, focusing instead on perfecting his timing mechanism. Everything would depend on precise release and optimal gas dispersion. On the fourth rotation, disaster struck. Leo returned from the nutrient hall to find his fabrication project sabotaged. The pressure seals loosened, calibrations altered, hours of work ruined. "Computer access security logs for this section," Leo demanded. "Security logs show no unauthorized entry," the AI responded. "Of course not. Several species at the Academy could manipulate matter without physical contact. Proving sabotage would be impossible." Leo slumped against the wall, exhaustion and frustration threatening to overwhelm him. He had less than 2 rotations remaining, and now he'd have to start over. Part of him wanted to withdraw from the challenge, to avoid the humiliation that seemed increasingly inevitable. "Having difficulties, Cadet Hart?" Leo looked up to see Chancellor Varen floating in the doorway. Unlike Xylorn, the Chancellor maintained a humanoid appearance, tall and slender with silvery skin that reflected light, like polished metal. "Nothing I can't handle, Chancellor," Leo said, quickly standing at attention. Varen glided into the room, examining the damaged apparatus with glowing eyes that missed nothing. "An interesting design," the Chancellor noted. "Quite different from what your colleagues are preparing." "That's the point of innovation, isn't it?" Leo couldn't keep a hint of bitterness from his voice. "Indeed." Varen touched one of the broken seals. "You know, Cadet, Professor Xylorn has a particular interest in your performance." "You mean he's particularly interested in seeing me fail?" The Chancellor's expression remained neutral. "I wouldn't presume to interpret the Professor's intentions. However, I will say that in his 300 years of teaching, he has developed certain expectations about the capabilities of younger species. And humans rank pretty low on that scale. Let us say that Earth's chemical traditions are considered nascent." Varen moved toward the door. "The delegation arriving for the exhibition includes representatives from systems that have not yet formed diplomatic relations with Earth. They will be watching with great interest." Leo understood the implication. This wasn't just about his academic standing. It was about humanity's reputation in the greater galactic community. "I won't let Earth down, Chancellor." "I believe you won't." Varen paused at the threshold. "Oh, and Cadet? The fabrication lab in Dome 7 is currently unoccupied. Its security protocols were recently upgraded to include quantum entanglement monitoring. Just an administrative detail you might find useful." With that, the Chancellor was gone, leaving Leo with renewed determination. He gathered his remaining materials and headed for Dome 7. The night before the exhibition, Leo sat cross-legged in the center of Pod 42, surrounded by holographic simulations of gas dispersal patterns. His new apparatus, constructed under the watchful eye of Dome 7's enhanced security, sat ready on his desk, a series of interconnected chambers that looked deceptively simple. "Run final simulation, variation 23, Leo instructed the computer. The hologram showed a slow-motion sequence, baking soda and vinegar combining in the primary chamber, carbon dioxide building pressure, then releasing through calibrated valves. The resulting gas cloud expanded in a perfect sphere, encountering and interacting with other gas mixtures in the simulation of the amphitheater. "Probability of achieving full spectral resonance?" Leo asked. 73%, the computer replied, contingent on accurate mapping of competing chemical reactions in the exhibition space. Not perfect, but the best he could hope for given the time constraints. Leo had studied the properties of every likely compound his classmates might use, calculating how their reaction products would interact with his carbon dioxide cloud. If his timing was perfect, if he could release his reaction at precisely the right moment, there was a chance. "Computer, save final configuration and power down for the night," As the holograms faded, Leo stared at his humble device, next to the gleaming, exotic constructions his classmates would bring. It would look like a child's science project. But appearances, he reminded himself, could be deceiving. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of laughter and failure. The exhibition day arrived with the artificial dawn that swept through the Academy's domes. Leo carefully transported his apparatus to the amphitheater, where workstations had been arranged in a new configuration, a single circle with the viewing area for dignitaries floating in the center. One by one, the cadets arrived with their projects. As Leo had predicted, the contrast was stark. Rox brought a containment field housing what appeared to be a miniature plasma storm, its colors shifting hypnotically. The silk scale twins had created a crystalline structure that seemed to grow and reconfigure itself in patterns of mathematical perfection. Others brought equally impressive displays, bioluminescent gels that responded to sound, metamaterials that bent light in impossible ways, corrosive fogs that dissolved and reformed solid objects. Beside these wonders, Leo's transparent chambers looked utterly unremarkable. "Cadets, take your positions," announced Professor Xylorn, materializing in the center of the amphitheater, alongside Chancellor Varin and 7 dignified beings Leo recognized as the Science Council delegation. The observers wore environmental suits adapted to their various physiologies, but all featured the same insignia, a spiral of stars representing the Council's authority over scientific advancement across known space. "Distinguished delegates," Xylorn began, his voice unusually formal. "We welcome you to witness the achievements of our third cycle cadets. Today, they demonstrate their mastery of indigenous chemical principles, a reminder that true innovation builds upon the foundations of one's own heritage." Leo noticed several of the delegates turn toward him with obvious curiosity. The sole human at the Academy was clearly an object of interest. "We shall proceed in order of star system age," Xylorn continued. "Rox of Proxima Centauri, you will begin." One by one, the cadets activated their projects. Rox's plasma storm generated gasps of appreciation as it formed perfect geometric patterns while emitting harmonics that resonated through the chamber. The silk scale twins crystal actually absorbed ambient light, then released it in concentrated beams that painted equations across the amphitheater walls. Each demonstration was met with approving murmurs from the delegates and Xylorn's nodding appendages. Each release of exotic compounds changed the atmosphere of the chamber slightly, creating a complex mixture of gases, particulates, and energy fields that the reactive walls displayed as shifting colors. Leo monitored these changes carefully on his datapad, adjusting his calculations as each new variable entered the equation. The chamber was becoming a chemical symphony, and soon it would be his turn to add his note. "Cadet Heart of Earth," Xylorn finally announced, an unmistakable note of anticipation in his voice. "You may proceed." All eyes turned to Leo's station. He could feel the weight of expectation, most anticipating failure, some perhaps hoping for a surprise. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. "My demonstration utilizes 2 compounds familiar to every Earth child," Leo began, keeping his voice steady. "Sodium bicarbonate and acetic acid, or as we commonly call them, baking soda and vinegar." A ripple of what could only be described as alien laughter moved through the amphitheater. Even some of the delegates exchanged glances. "When combined," Leo continued, undeterred, "they create a simple acid-base reaction resulting in sodium acetate, water, and carbon dioxide. On Earth, this reaction is often a child's first introduction to chemistry." Xylorn's appendages writhed with what might have been amusement or contempt. "Proceed with your elementary demonstration, cadet." Leo nodded and activated the release mechanism. Inside the primary chamber, the baking soda and vinegar combined. Immediately, bubbling foam formed, and pressure began to build. But instead of the expected eruption, the carbon dioxide was channeled through the sequence of smaller chambers, each one regulating its release. At first, nothing remarkable seemed to happen. A fine mist of carbon dioxide particles emerged from the final chamber, expanding slowly into the space around Leo's station. There were a few snickers from his classmates. "Is that all?" Rox called out, her plasma wings flickering with derision. Leo didn't respond. He was counting silently, watching the mist expand outward, monitoring its interaction with the complex atmospheric mixture created by the previous demonstrations. 3, 2, 1. The carbon dioxide cloud reached a critical dispersal point, and something unexpected began to happen as it encountered the residual gases from Rox's plasma storm. The particles began to glow with a faint blue luminescence. This light intensified as it spread further, interacting with the crystalline particulates left by the twins' demonstration. The amphitheater walls, sensitive to chemical changes, began to pulse with color, not chaotically, but in organized waves that spread from Leo's station outward. The carbon dioxide was acting as a synchronizing agent, a common element that could interact with the exotic compounds in ways their creators hadn't anticipated. Gasps replaced laughter as the effect spread. Each previous demonstration had been isolated, impressive, but disconnected. Now, through the simple catalyst of Earth chemistry, they were being united into something greater than the sum of their parts. The entire dome pulsed in concert, a chemical symphony with carbon dioxide as its conductor. Professor Xylorn drifted closer to Leo's station, all 8 eyes wide with disbelief. "This is unexpected," he admitted, his translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in his natural voice. "Carbon dioxide is often overlooked because of its ubiquity," Leo explained, unable to keep a note of pride from his voice. "But in zero gravity, its dispersion patterns allow it to act as a universal intermediary between otherwise incompatible reactions. I didn't create something new. I found the connection between everything already present." The synchronized reaction continued for nearly 10 minutes, colors and patterns shifting through the chamber in harmonious sequence, before gradually fading as the chemical components reached equilibrium. When it finally ended, there was profound silence. Chancellor Varin was the first to speak. "I believe this demonstrates the principle of xenochemical resonance quite effectively," she said. "Cadet Hart has shown us that sometimes the most profound insights come from the most fundamental elements." The delegation murmured in agreement. One of them, a being composed entirely of interlocking geometric shapes, actually floated over to examine Leo's simple apparatus more closely. "The scoring for this exhibition," Xylorn announced, his voice strangely subdued, "will be suspended pending further analysis. Cadet Hart, you will report to my private chamber immediately following the conclusion of this event." Leo nodded, uncertain whether to interpret this as recognition or trouble. The remaining demonstrations proceeded, but it was clear that the impact of Leo's synchronizing reaction had altered the atmosphere, both chemically and metaphorically. Later, floating before the entrance to Xylorn's private chamber, Leo tried to calm his racing heart. The door, a spiral iris of reactive metal, parted to admit him into a space unlike any he had seen at the Academy. The chamber was a perfect sphere, its interior surface covered with what appeared to be living tissue that pulsed with neural activity. In the center floated Professor Xylorn, his gelatinous body now expanded to twice its normal size, appendages extended in all directions. "Cadet Hart," the professor's voice reverberated through the chamber. "Your demonstration today has created quite a situation." Leo remained silent, waiting. "In 300 years of teaching," Xylorn continued, "I have observed a pattern. Younger species invariably attempt to imitate the techniques of older ones, believing that complexity equals advancement. They produce pale imitations of what has come before. One of the professor's appendages gestured, and a holographic replay of Leo's demonstration appeared between them. You did not follow this pattern. Instead, you identified a principle that many of us have overlooked precisely because of its simplicity. Xylorn's body pulsed with colors Leo couldn't interpret. The Science Council delegates were most impressed. "Thank you, Professor," Leo said cautiously. "I did not say I was impressed," Xylorn countered. "Merely that an unexpected outcome occurred. The question now becomes, what shall we do with this outcome?" Leo frowned. "I don't understand." "The Council has expressed interest in having you present your findings at their central symposium. This would be unprecedented for a third-cycle cadet, particularly one from Earth." Xylorn's appendages writhed in what might have been agitation. Such recognition would bring considerable prestige to the Academy. Now Leo understood. "And to you as my instructor." "Precisely." The professor's voice took on a calculating tone. "However, your current understanding is rudimentary at best. To represent the Academy properly, you would require intensive additional training under my direct supervision. Your regular studies would be suspended. You would work exclusively on refining this technique for presentation." The offer was clear. Leverage his discovery for Xylorn's benefit and receive special treatment, or refuse and face potential consequences. "What if I decline?" Leo asked. "Then you return to regular studies, and we consider today's exhibition an interesting anomaly. Perhaps in a few cycles, when you have proper perspective, the technique might be revisited." Xylorn's tone made it clear that a few cycles might mean never. Leo considered his options. The recognition from the Council could advance Earth's standing in the interstellar community significantly. Yet becoming Xylorn's research project felt like a betrayal of the very principle he had demonstrated, that simplicity and insight mattered more than prestige and complexity. "I appreciate the offer, Professor," Leo said carefully. "But I believe my discovery would be better served by continuing my regular studies. The principles involved are fundamental enough that they should be incorporated into standard curriculum, not treated as an advanced specialty." Xylorn's body darkened to a deep indigo. "You refuse my mentorship?" "I respectfully suggest an alternative approach," Leo replied. "Allow me to document my findings formally for Academy records. If the Council still wishes to hear a presentation, I would be honored to represent Earth and the Academy, as a regular student who made an observation, not as a special project." For a long moment, Xylorn was silent, his appendages unnervingly still. Then, unexpectedly, his body brightened to a vibrant turquoise. "Fascinating," the professor said finally. "You continue to defy conventional patterns. Cadet Hart, perhaps there is more to Earth chemistry than I had calculated." A pause. "Very well. Document your findings. The Council meets in 2 rotations. You will present to them then, as a representative of both Earth and this Academy." Leo tried not to show his surprise at this sudden reversal. "Thank you, Professor." "Do not thank me yet," Xylorn warned. "The Council does not suffer disappointment gladly. Your presentation must be perfect." As Leo left the chamber, he realized he had just committed to creating a demonstration that would impress some of the most advanced scientific minds in known space, in just 2 rotations. Back in Pod 42, Leo spent hours refining his documentation. The principles were simple enough: carbon dioxide's unique properties as a universal intermediary in zero gravity. But the implications were profound, properly applied. This technique could revolutionize multi-phase chemical engineering across dozens of applications. By the time the artificial night cycle began, Leo had compiled a comprehensive report. But a nagging doubt remained. The Council would expect more than just theory. They would want a demonstration even more impressive than what they had witnessed in the amphitheater. Leo stared at his simple apparatus, wondering how he could possibly enhance the effect. The answer came to him as he was drifting into exhausted sleep. He couldn't make the reaction more complex, but he could make it more meaningful. The following rotation passed in a flurry of preparation. Leo requested and received permission to access the Academy's historical archives, searching through records of chemical reactions from across the 17 member systems. What he found confirmed his theory. Carbon-based chemistry, so often dismissed as primitive, had analogs in nearly every advanced civilization's early development. When the time came for his presentation, Leo stood before the assembled council in the Academy's grand reception dome. The delegates floated in a semicircle before him, their various environmental suits gleaming under the soft lights. Behind them, a larger audience had gathered, students and faculty alike, drawn by rumors of the humans' unusual demonstration. Chancellor Varen made the formal introductions, her silver skin reflecting the subtle shifts of color in the reactive walls. Professor Xylorn hovered nearby, his appendages unnaturally still, all eyes focused on Leo. "Honored delegates," Leo began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "2 rotations ago, you witnessed an unexpected reaction involving Earth compounds. Today, I would like to show you something more profound than a chemical curiosity." He gestured, and a hovering platform brought forward his apparatus, modified now with additional chambers and monitoring equipment. "The reaction you are about to see utilizes the same basic compounds, sodium bicarbonate and acetic acid. But this time, I've calibrated it to interact specifically with elements from each of your home systems." Leo activated a holographic display showing 17 distinct chemical signatures. These compounds were extracted from the historical archives, the first documented reactions studied by each of your civilizations during their early scientific development. A murmur ran through the audience. Even Xylorn's appendages twitched with apparent interest. "What we consider primitive or advanced is often merely a matter of perspective and time," Leo continued. "The principles that govern chemical reactions are universal. It's our understanding that evolves." With that, he activated his device. As before, the baking soda and vinegar combined, generating carbon dioxide that was carefully channeled through the sequence of chambers. This time, however, each chamber contained trace amounts of the historical compounds, the chemical ancestors of the advanced sciences, represented by the council members. The carbon dioxide cloud emerged and began to expand. But now, with a purpose beyond simple dispersion. As it encountered each historical compound, it triggered a reaction that produced a distinct color and pattern. 17 unique signatures that began to orbit around the central cloud, like planets around a star. The reactive walls of the dome came alive with color, displaying not just the immediate reactions, but their historical context, equations and molecular structures from the earliest scientific documents of each civilization. The same principles that allowed Earth children to create their first chemical reaction, Leo explained as the display continued, laid the foundation for every advanced technique we now employ. Different paths, same destination. The council delegates watched in silence as their own chemical heritage was displayed, connected through the simple intermediary of carbon dioxide. It was a demonstration, not just of chemistry, but of shared scientific heritage. A reminder that all advanced knowledge builds upon fundamental insights. When the reaction finally dissipated, there was a moment of profound silence. Then, one by one, the delegates activated their communication systems. "Earth chemistry displays unexpected elegance," said the geometric being that had examined Leo's apparatus earlier. "The symmetry principle is well demonstrated," agreed another, whose environmental suit contained what appeared to be a miniature ocean. The head of the delegation, a tall being with 12 jointed limbs, addressed Chancellor Varen directly. "The Academy has done well to include Earth in its program. Different perspectives clearly have value." Varen inclined her head gracefully. The Academy strives to recognize potential wherever it may be found. Leo caught Professor Xylorn's gaze. The gelatinous being's color had shifted to a hue Leo had never seen before. Perhaps the equivalent of thoughtful reassessment. "Cadet Hart," the professor said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "It seems I must revise certain long-held calculations regarding the developmental trajectory of chemical understanding." Coming from Xylorn, this was tantamount to an apology. "The Council extends an invitation," announced the lead delegate. "We would welcome Earth's representation on our Xenochemical Advisory Committee. Cadet Hart, upon completion of your studies, a position awaits you." Leo bowed deeply, recognizing the honor being offered, not just to him, but to Earth itself. "I am humbled by your consideration and accept with gratitude." As the formal proceedings concluded, and the delegates dispersed to mingle with faculty, Leo found himself approached by several classmates who had previously dismissed him. Even Rox, her plasma wings subdued to a gentle flicker, drifted over. "Your reaction was not entirely without merit," she conceded. "Perhaps there is something to be learned from simpler approaches." "Not simpler," Leo corrected gently. "More fundamental. The difference matters." Rox considered this, then inclined her fiery head in acknowledgement before drifting away. Chancellor Varin appeared at Leo's side. "You have done more than impress the Council, Cadet Hart. You have opened a door for Earth." "I just applied what I learned here," Leo replied. "Did you?" Varin's silvery features formed what might have been a smile. "Or did you teach us something we had forgotten?" Professor Xylorn has already submitted a proposal to revise the first cycle curriculum to include what he is calling fundamental resonance theory. Leo glanced across the chamber, where Xylorn was engaged in animated discussion with several delegates, appendages gesturing expansively. "Never underestimate the impact of a small catalyst in the right environment," Varin said. "Now, I believe you have admirers waiting to speak with you." As the Chancellor glided away, Leo found himself surrounded by curious students and faculty, all eager to discuss his technique. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, he felt not like an outsider struggling to prove himself, but like a colleague with something valuable to contribute. Hours later, when the reception had ended and the domes had shifted to night cycle, Leo returned alone to Pod 42. He carefully placed his apparatus on a shelf where the artificial gravity was weakest, allowing it to float as if suspended in thought. The humble device, little more than kitchen chemistry by Academy standards, had accomplished what no amount of complexity could have. It had found the common thread that connected 17 different paths to knowledge. Leo smiled as he settled into his rest pod, eyes fixed on the floating chambers. Earth might be a newcomer to the interstellar community, but perhaps that perspective was exactly what was needed. Someone who could see the fundamental connections that others, too specialized in their advanced techniques, had forgotten to look for. As sleep began to claim him, Leo's final thought was of his mother's face when he told her that her emergency supplies had just earned humanity a seat on the Interstellar Science Council. Some forms of wisdom, it seemed, transcended even the stars. In the artificial night of the Academy, Pod 42 rotated gently, one more point of light in a constellation of minds reaching outward together, connected by the invisible bonds of shared discovery.